It was summertime on the island of Sodor. Lots of vacationers were coming to the island. They liked to see the beautiful forests and the high mountains. It was a busy time for all the engines. A new engine had arrived on the island. He was going to help take the vacationers up into the mountains. Thomas had arrived at the transfer yards. He was very excited to meet the new engine. Puff Thomas. The new engine puffed back. They whistled happily. Thomas had never seen such an unusual engine before. Then the narrow gauge controller, Mr. Percival, arrived. Said Mr. Percival. Mighty Mac could see the vacationers. They were waiting on the platform. But there were lots of tracks between Mighty Mac and the vacationers. Mighty Mac didn't know how to get to the platform. Moaned Mighty to Thomas. Groaned Mac. Whistled Thomas. Mighty set off nervously. But as they puffed along the track, Mac thought his way was quicker. He said, "Huff, Mighty." Soon they were puffing left and right, backwards and forwards. They were very confused. They even had a ride on the turntable. Then, at last, Puff Mac. Asked Mighty. Said Mr. Percival sternly. Said Mac. Said Mighty. They felt very silly. Finally, the passengers were on board. Mighty Mac puffed through the countryside on the way to the campground. Chuff Mighty. Then, in the mountains, there was a fork in the track. Mighty wanted to go left. He puffed. Shouted Mac. But Mighty was already pulling them past the fork. Mac was cross. The next time they came to a fork in the track, Mac wanted to go the other way again. He puffed, and he pulled Mighty back to the junction, and then pushed him back up the other line. Now Mighty was cross. They puffed through the mountains, and whenever they came across a junction, Mighty would push one way, then Mac would pull the other. The vacationers were having a very bumpy ride. They spilled their drinks and their donuts went flying. But Mighty Mac pressed on. Then there was trouble. They had arrived at a dead end. The vacationers took a look around. Said one of them. Said another. Puffed Mighty, and he pushed back towards Mac. Huffed Mac, and he pushed back even harder. The vacationers watched as Mighty Mac buffed backwards and forwards. Called the vacationers. But it was too late. Mighty pushed Mac as hard as he could, and the coach crashed into the rocks. First one rock fell, then another rock. Soon lots of rocks came tumbling down. The track was blocked, and they were all stuck. Moaned the vacationers, and it was all Mighty Mac's fault. They felt terrible. It was getting late. The vacationers were working hard. They were trying to get the coach back onto the rails. Then, with a mighty heave, the vacationers lifted the coach back onto the track. Mighty Mac was watching them. Hooted Mighty. Tooted Mac. Then, they had an idea. Puff Mighty. Huff Mac. So Mighty Mac rolled up to the rocks, and pushed and pushed. The rocks rumbled, and then they rocked, until finally the track was clear. The vacationers cheered. Mighty Mac was ready to go. They could see the flag flying high above the campground. Then they remembered what Thomas had said. Puff Mac. Chuff Mighty. They whistled together. Mighty Mac puffed up the mountains. And soon they arrived at the campground. The vacationers were very happy, and Mighty Mac was very proud. Wheesh Mighty. Whistled Mac, and they set off happily back down the mountain.